So welcome, AJ, to our next edition of GBS Leaders. I'm really pleased to have you with us today. For those that don't know me, I'm Rakesh Sangani, your host of our GBS Leaders podcast. AJ, do you want to give a quick introduction? And then I will fire away at least 10 questions at you over the next 20-25 minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today, Rakesh, and excited to be part of your podcast. I'm AJ Wijesinghe. I'm the Senior Vice President for Global Business Services here at Ecolab, and I'm based out of Chicago. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. So let's go straight into it. So GBS, how do you see the evolution of GBS? What does GBS 4.0 look like for you? You know, organizations have moved from lift and shift, then lots of talk about lean and Six Sigma, lots of talk about India and Philippines and low-cost locations. What does the next stage of GBS look like for you?
So the GBS, everyone starts as a very functional-oriented organization, and then it's really the shared services. Then it evolves into more of a GBS construct on a multifunctional and then more process-based. 4.0 for me is more like experience-based. So matured organizations have gone into this. I would say about only 5% from my observation in the industry is in this box. So there's a lot of upside. Everyone is really around the 3.0, more the process-based, and they're matured, because the value realization really gets to around almost 90% or even 100% at the process base. To go from there to the experience base, it's more around customer experience, supply experience, and people experience. So how you land there, some organizations still trying to figure out what value does it really drive, but it could be around easy to do business with, less attrition. People would love to come into work and then be part of organization, build that kind of culture. And then at the same time, how do you reduce the customer churn by providing a better experience, etc. So that's where I think the value is. And some organizations is also evolving to doing analytics services as enterprise capability using GBS as a platform. Then you can go on from a process intelligence and process optimization, etc. So that's where I feel the 4.0 will look like in a very matured state. There's going to be a lot of data-driven analytics that's going to help, and then insights to the organization.
So experience, data, and analytics. Interesting. Process, you touched on as kind of 3.0, but why is it that the whole GPO model hasn't seemed to have landed across GBS today?
So the most organizations have not, because they, in order for you to go from a multifunctional GBS organization into a process base, you do have to have GPOs, or the global process owners, in place. And most organizations have a hard time figuring that out, how exactly to incorporate that, how do you do end-to-end? As an example, generally you have a subcomponent of the end-to-end process that sits within a GBS function. So then you would put a GPO just for that component. The most successful GPOs, in my opinion, should be for true end-to-end process. And then the enterprise should provide the support for you to be able to have that individual be successful through process councils, data councils, to be able to drive that. As an example, quote to cash or customer to cash or source to pay, that you should, or hire to retire, that should be end-to-end, regardless of what sits within GBS or not. So, and then as a matter of fact, going back to the earlier question you asked, the GPOs are a must-have in order for you to be able to get to the experience, because that is what really gets you the evolution going to land in a very matured state in that experience at the end state.
Right. Yeah. So link experience to the GPO model, and also think end to end rather than splitting it into smaller segments. I think both are really good points. And we see lots of businesses struggle with their GPO models today. So I'm going to move from process onto technology. artificial intelligence, Gen AI, there's lots of hype around this topic. Should we be excited, or is it something that we should be worried about?
I think we should be absolutely excited. And there are a lot of buzzwords. Some folks wouldn't probably understand what that means. But I would say first thing is no AI, whether it's generative or otherwise, you would be able to do if you don't have the right data structures in place. Without data, nothing will work. Automation, analytics, predictive or prescriptive analytics around that, or the AI. Now, the thing about generative AI, though, which is the latest and the hottest thing that's out there, we have to be careful how we just approach it as an enterprise, right? Because if you go and do something like ChatGPT, what you put out there is in a public domain. So the organization is trying to figure out exactly how to contain that within the walls of the enterprise, so that it just doesn't get out to the public domain, and then how to then also apply that in the use cases that's set up. So for GBS standpoint, there are many use cases that you can use, from predictive analytics that you will drive from the prescriptive analytics, or AI-driven ways that how you do expense reports, if, for example, or even DSO calculations, the DPOs that, how you'll be able to go drive that from a days payable outstanding, etc. So there are many ways you can be able to use AI for a GBS to add a ton of value back into the enterprise. So therefore, I think we should be all excited about it.
Excellent. All right. Glad to hear it. You're not worried about AI at all. What about BPO? Yeah, outsourcing. There was a lot of talk about it being dead when RPA came into the front and center, but it's also fair to say that outsourcing continues to grow. However, insourcing is more popular than ever before. So, what's your view on that BPO conundrum?
I think, BPO the opportunity for the BPO is a vast market that's out there. However, if you look at it, it's a generational situation that I find myself in when I talk about BPO. What I mean by that is it's growing because there are first generation customers that are coming in doing in BPO. But the second, third, or fourth or fifth generation buyers have become a lot savvy than they were when they did it first, because you have battle scars that you get out of that. In my humble opinion, the BPO and hybrid model, I'm a believer in that. However, BPO, you had to find the right partner to be able to deliver value. What does that mean by value? Gone are the days about labor arbitrage, or you just trying to drive a contract by number of heads. Now it's about the outcomes you're trying to deliver, right? So that's automation. Then also how we can be able to mutually benefit from taking cost out, that we can be able to give you more. Most BPO providers struggle to make that shift. So I don't think they're going to become irrelevant because of AI or because of RPA or any other thing. It has to do with the fact that they are not being agile and understanding what the changing customer dynamics and being able to adapt to that. That's where the challenge is. Those who will figure out will go on to be thriving, and those who will not make that shift will disappear.
For example, I assume you referred to the fact that many BPO contracts are still FTE based BPO contracts, hence the incentive being around the number of FTE rather than the profitability and transforming that particular process.
Absolutely. So everything is about, so if you think about it, that very statement, FTE is for the BPOs, and that's their priority, same account revenue growth. As a buyer, as a GBS leader, how I'm measured is the complete opposite of that, bringing the cost down. So now we are competing against two opposite goals on both ends. So we will never land on the same. We will not be able to see eye to eye. So that's why after the initial contract, the values start to disappear. Everything is a change order. I remember about 15 years ago, I was in a conference that one of the leaders just talked about how to measure the success or failure of a BPO relationship. And this person said, it's the least number of times that you refer to your statement of work. That is a successful relationship, because now you build a partnership, right? So, but if it's all FTE based, it's all about statement of work. You lead with the statement of work, which doesn't really work, because the dynamics of the buyer change, the organizational dynamics change. So therefore, BPO as a partner should be ready to help you navigate through those. Then that they become a partner. Then you can give more things, not less things around that. But I see less and less providers are getting there. Ironically, like you said, it's still a growing business, but there's a time that's going to come that when the buyer becomes savvier, then BPO as an industry could have some challenges.
So it doesn't surprise you that insourcing is growing faster than ever before because of that maturity of the buyer and the fact that they're not providing the incremental value.
So the insourcing is increasing for those customers or the GBS organizations, the organizations that who have a matured or a GBS organization, and they're in the second or the third generation of a BPO contract.
Correct.
So now, because that comes down to where GBS organization has matured, they could be able to deliver at a lower cost point than what we are getting from the BPO partner. Then you're trying to understand what exactly the value BPO provider is giving you, because you have internal capabilities and automation, AI, and all those different things that you bring into the table that we can do better at a lower cost point. Then there's no value proposition anymore. So that's the reason why that's happening. But again, if you look at the segment, it's more the second, third, or the fourth generation, the customers who have bought, that they are now shifting. They are not seeing the value.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Excellent. Yeah. Moving tack then, location. What particular locations are you excited about at the moment and interested in?
I think it's depend on what your needs are, what your geographical presence is. I would just, rather than saying a specific location, it's just around what does it need to be, the customer proximity standpoint, the time zone requirements, the language requirements, etc. Anything beyond that, if it's English speaking and then none of the other requirements are there, then you would be able to go for locations in India. There are tier 2 cities start to emerge, and then how we go out really matured that what's out there. Obviously Philippines is another one from Asia standpoint. But then you go to Europe, Sofia, Bulgaria start to come up, often. And obviously Poland is very mature with all the different sites that start to come up. Cities like Gdańsk, start to come into play. Obviously Bucharest is there. So there are multiple places in the Eastern European, the bloc is start to come up with the new sites. Out of all places, like Vilnius would just, they are very organized, and they would want you to come in and then set up the incentives that they give you to get attracted to. So you look at the total value that what it's going to give you, and also the workforce maturity is something that'll help you to drive to figure out what location you need. It's really depend on what your organization's needs are, and then how you'll just come with a location strategy. But I can tell you is that no organization should have no more than, we should have one global hub, and then you have some regional spokes. Right. Generally, I see the optimal is probably 5 at the most.
Yes,
not less.
Yeah. So you're not a great believer of a completely virtual operating model where you've got all of your existing locations connected to that central GBS function.
100% virtual. I'm not a believer, and here's why. If you go to the roots of what GBS is about, it's about centralizing and building a culture of continuous improvement in one location. So if you go move to a location in India, for example, and then you go completely virtual, then what the value that has added other than, it is in India. So we just need to make sure that camaraderie that you drive, and the innovative mindset, and then how you want to be able to get there, is all in one place, physically present, right? So in a recent visit to India, that I found that the actual dynamics have changed. They have these large tech parks, they come together, and everybody wants to come to office rather than work from home. It's the reverse of what I've seen elsewhere. On average, they come to office like 4 days. And there are other locations I see, they want to come in on only for 2 days. But so the world is shifting based on the geography. I find that from a GBS standpoint, there's a ton of value for everyone to be there and then collaborate. But that is again depend on the organizational culture and the needs. But having it together rather than being 100% virtual and having some hybrid is something that I believe in.
Excellent. Okay. Moving from location back to the RPA topic, was RPA a failure? There's a lot of hype around RPA a few years ago. We saw the significant growth of the likes of Blue Prism and UiPath. We don't hear as much about it now in a GBS context. Did it fail?
I don't believe RPA failed. So it depends on what lens you look at. So if someone would say it failed, it probably failed in the way that the hype it brought up and what it could do. It's all like anything else that you want to put the good technology for the right use case. It is still valid for certain use cases, but it is not the recipe for everything from automation standpoint. And I always say that if you have a core system, a core ERP system, your end goal should be to have that automation done within that core system, right? So whether it is the ERP or the workflow you have, that's where it should reside. Then if you cannot, you can use RPA as a bridge until you get to that point. Because sometimes when you try to just go drive that automation, there's a huge backlog. It's going to take 2 years to get there. Fine. But then you use RPA as a short-term bridge to get us there. So in those use cases, it helps. But as a permanent solution, unless that you have the right support structure, it could become a failure because you just don't support like any other, technology probably not supported or configured. And also, I will say that I say about use cases because I just live by a principle that don't put good technology to a bad process. This is true about RPA. Where you feel that it's failed is probably you put the good technology to a bad process. So as long as you do a process-led approach to put the technology, even RPA, then you can still get value out of RPA.
So RPA is not a failure. It's choosing the wrong process. That sounds like that's a failure.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a topic that I know a lot of GBS leaders have a dilemma around, and that's the level of infrastructure you need when setting up a GBS. Do you need a service management function, a continuous improvement function, an automation team? What level of infrastructure do you think a GBS really needs?
I believe there's the real value in the infrastructure that you had to put in place if you were to just continue to deliver value back into the business. So I see it across the following: the people ownership, process ownership. So the people ownership, if it is GBS owned completely, or it could be more of a hosted model, but you can add a lot more than a landlord model if you do the following. That means you co-own the process. Then you would go out there and make sure you provide transition services. That means assessing what the opportunity is and then moving from point A to point B, all transition management around it, service governance framework that you put in place. And then you would just also have the continuous improvement and automation teams that are there with the technology stack and the strategy. Doesn't mean you have to own the technology team always. If you have a great partner with your IT team who would have a fast lane for you carved out that you could partner with them, great, then you can do that. Location strategy, talent strategy, all those different elements that you will look for, that's the infrastructure that you build, then that'll help you to make sure that we continue to deliver value back. Because imagine if you have 8 functions that's sitting in your the GBS platform, then if you don't have this infrastructure, everybody's going to do this thing very differently. So it's a waste, right? So now you got the initial value, sustaining of that value is no longer there. So it's important that we use a single methodology and a consistent way we approach from a talent process technology standpoint just so that we continue to thrive in a GBS model rather than just feeding like we got lots of silos sitting under one roof.
And how big should that be? So if I had, I don't know, 400 people, how much of that should be kind of that infrastructure resource in my GBS versus people doing the day jobs?
Rather than putting a number, I'll say it should be a thin layer, right? So because it's depending on the needs that's in there, how you go about putting a recruitment team or a HR team on HR business partners that's in there, finance support you will drive, PMO transitions. Depend on if you have more things in the pipeline, you should have a bigger team. If you don't, there's a very thin team there, and so on and so forth. From an automation and process standpoint, technology can do a huge role that it can play from process mining or process insights. Then if the technology plays a large role, then you need less people. You need more experts on that. So, but it is important that you understand not only the size of the organization you have, and then what it's going to grow, what's the opportunity that's there for you to be able to maintain that infrastructure accordingly and with some agility that will.
And what is that right mark? 10%, 20%, 5%? What's the range for you?
I would say probably 10% sounds right from an infrastructure support standpoint.
Okay. Next question from me. GBS, should it be a disruptor changing the organization, or actually should it be like a referee in a football match trying to keep the business stable? How do you see the role of GBS within a business?
I feel that you should be a disruptive partner for the organization. If you do status quo, you're not adding much value. So then the stakeholders will ask you, what value do you add? Why can't I do it myself? And then also, I think it's effective GBSs should be set up as an extension, a seamless extension of the function itself, then how we try to drive the service back in there and fully integrated in a way that it feels seamless, right? So you could still have the GBS value that can be delivered, yet you don't feel like they're going into a black box. So then what you have within, you should bring the thought leadership in to be able to disrupt it there. So if you tie back to earlier point that you talk about, if you have a GPO that goes end to end, then you can influence the portions you don't have to be disruptive because you own the end-to-end process and the process councils, etc. So then it influence the thinking of the rest of the business. Because in the end-to-end process is just like a rowing boat, right? So you could have all different individual rowers. We try to bring it together as one team, and then now we need to be in sync. We can play that role.
So ultimately, disrupt, but put the mechanisms into place so you don't destabilize.
That's right.
Right. Interesting. Final question from me, AJ. Over the last 12 months, what have you seen in the marketplace that has been changing or different to what was there before?
I would say the AI focus has shifted significantly, and everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon on that. And automation is at the center of everything we do. Hybrid models are coming into to play, right? So that is shifting from all outsource or all captive versus just getting to more of a blend of the processes that's out there. And it started being all virtual to now it started to shift it to more of a hybrid I see the market landing more of 3 days in and 2 days, work from home type of a setup. And then the tools that are coming into from a process-oriented automation that's out there, it's also shifting in a big way. That's complementing the GBS structure, and GBS, what it means to the organization, start to shift as well as a result.
Excellent. Very interesting. So I guess my key takeaways, I'll go back to your first question, was really around GBS being about experience. And I think all of your answers related to that. Having a BPO that gives you a good experience, the use case and the experience, not just on having technology for the sake of it. So a big thank you from me, AJ. Thank you for your participation today. Thank you for your openness. And we will definitely speak again soon.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Rakesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care now.